Professor Vamsi Krishna Juri teaches Media Studies at the University of San Francisco. He is the son of Professor J.B. Raman Rao, who taught Zoology at Osmania University, Hyderabad, and Srimati Jamuna, the leading star of Telugu, Tamil, Kannada and Hindi cinemas and a former member of parliament. Professor Juri studied in Chennai, Hyderabad, Bengaluru, New Delhi and United States. He received a PhD in communication from the University of Massachusetts Amherst in 1999 for his research on globalization and its impact on music television audience in India. He has written several books and novels, including Becoming a Global Audience, Longing and Belonging in Indian Music Television, The Mythologist, a novel inspired by his childhood memories growing up in the Telugu film industry, Bollywood Nations, a history of modern India through popular cinemas. The Kishkinda Chronicles, a fictitious series, and Rearming Hinduism, a manifesto for cultural revival, nature protection, and ending Hinduphobia. He is also a prolific columnist and cultural commentator and has written in the Huffington Post, the Indian Express, the Print, First Post, Pragyata and other popular outlets. Professor Jhaveri was also one of the first scholars in the American social science to speak up against the misrepresentation of Hinduism and Bharat in Western media and academia, and was actively involved in the popular movement to stop the erasure of name of India in California's school history curriculum in 2016. In his talk for the student of IITB for Bharat, he will share his experience on the writing and receptions of his recently updated bestseller Rearming Hinduism, The Future of Hinduism and Hindus in the Climate of Terror, Violence and Propaganda, and the need for every Hindu student to be a social scientist, a cultural visionary, student of ancestral memory, and most important of all, prepared to be the ancestor of the future as well. Thank you.
Swamiye Sharanamaya. I'm so grateful. I'm very grateful to be here in this temple, and I'm particularly grateful to Swami for bringing us safely through this rainy Ghat Road drive from Pune this afternoon. I am almost at the end of my sabbatical and heading back to California in a couple of days. But I was so thrilled that the community here wanted to read my book and talk about it, and we obviously share some pressing concerns. So I'm grateful that I've just about managed to make it here through the rain and the traffic, and I hope we'll have a wonderful conversation today. And my thanks to all the distinguished panelists and hosts, IITB, for me and the Kerala Committee. So I thought I'd just read the first page, the first few lines of my book, because I'm a writer, and when I write, I think the form is as important as the facts or what I want to convey. So I'd like to just give you a sense of my feelings in my own voice from the new preface, and then talk for a few minutes about what I meant when I said everybody has to be a social scientist and an ancestor of the future. And I'm looking forward to question and discussions. So this is from the preface to the updated edition. From Mamadehi Karavalambam to Jai Shri Ram, reflecting on rearming Hinduism's journey from 2014 to 2024. Mamadehi Karavalambam from Adi Shankara's prayer to Narasimha Swami. Narasimha Swami is on the cover. That's what I used to sign on this book 10 years ago when it first came out. But now, of course, this year I felt like signing Jai Shri Ram. So this book is about hope, the journey from hope to anguish and concern, and maybe back again, because some of you might have seen a video
of the launch we had for this book last month in Delhi, the JSI Deepak, another devout friend of Ayyappa Swami, if there is one, Anand Ramanathan and my friend Ashish Dutt. All of us who share this concern about temples, about our children, about the future. So we were in a mood of despair because the massacre of the pilgrims in Kasi had happened just a few days before the book launch. So anyway, so the mood is full of hope, the mood is full of anguish, but I'll just read the first 2 pages of my book. 10 years ago, I wrote a book inspired by the sight of a great and mighty God left out in the sun, dust and rain in Hampi for nearly 450 years. That book was titled Rearming Hinduism, a new edition of which you now hold in your hands. And strangely enough, it wasn't just the sight of that great deity towering over the broken walls of the enclosure that inspired the title of this book, but specifically that of his missing right hand. The missing right hand. My whole life I had seen gods in temples or in my parents' puja room. Here the gods were always intact, healthy, resplendent, and smiling. But sometimes I also saw gods in museums or in open lands, often described as historical sites or ruins. Most of the time, as was the case when I visited Qutub Minar as a child, I did not even notice the gods staring down half erased from some old, half-broken temple column. Or when I did notice them, as was the case when we visited museums, they were presented in a different context as sculptures rather than as how we normally knew them. That was that and this was this, or so I thought until a certain point in my life. In Hampi, it struck me. This great stone sculpture of Narasimha Swami was not meant to be just glanced at and put behind us like a background to a selfie. This was a god. He was a god meant to be adored and adorned the same way as Balaji in Tirumala or Ayyappa Swami in Sabarimala or any other great deity of Bharat. For that was what this monument was. It was a temple once. Inside, Narasimha Swami and Goddess Lakshmi sat, resplendent in jewels and flowers, and smiled like loving parents at generations of Vijayanagara children who came to worship them and receive their prasad day after day. Yet, he stood now only as a fragment of his once complete and glorious self. His right arm was chopped off, so were parts of his limbs, and most egregiously, so was his consort, our mother, Goddess Lakshmi, who once rested on his left thigh. Only a hand remained. A god without a right hand and a right hand of a goddess. Still, he kept smiling. But what was the nature of that smile? Were there times during childhood when you saw your father smile about some mysterious grown-up thing beyond your understanding? You couldn't understand what it meant, maybe. But then, when I began writing Rearming Hinduism, I used to think Narasimha Swami's expression was actually one of precise and righteous anger. The kind that you feel when you are down and almost defeated, but then something gets ignited in you and makes you stand up to fight again. Narasimha Swami. Stand up and fight again.
So, very briefly, I wrote this book first in 2014, in just a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, I think. Obviously, the book was simmering inside me for several years. Now, a little bit about myself. I am trained as a professor or a researcher in media studies. So what I was doing for a very long time was teaching my students how to analyze the media, how to detect when media is telling lies. how the media is used to spread propaganda and go to war. And I was doing this for many years, and then slowly I started to realize the same things I was pointing out with media and other communities was happening to us. It was happening to my gods, my goddesses, my people, my homeland. And I began to write about it in scholarly and popular journals. And I think I first got interested in this issue around 2006-07. There was a big controversy about the textbooks in California. Even at that stage, I thought through reason and evidence, people would understand our concerns. Sadly, that hardly made a difference. And then a few years later, 2008, right here in this very city, there was a terrible terrorist attack. And what was even more hurtful than that massacre perhaps was the disdain, was the arrogance, was the absolute lack of compassion and human rights for many in the Western media. The New York Times, the BBC, the Washington Post, they were completely oblivious to the fact that so many people were killed. And then they started turning the reason for that massacre into some kind of a supposed backlash against rich people by oppressed poor minorities. And all the newspapers were saying that. Then at the same time, a movie also came out called Slumdog Millionaire, which was very popular. That movie also was making the similar argument. And when I saw that much coordination in the media to dehumanize, to demonize a whole community of people, I think I felt I had to write in an even stronger way. And then a few years later, in 2014, I wrote this book. Since that time, for 2 or 3 years, I had the pleasure of meeting a lot of readers of this book. And then my old publisher went defunct, and then the book went out of print. So for a few years, the book was not to be found. But earlier this year, Blue One Inc. Said they wanted to republish the book, so I wrote a new preface and a new afterword. And I just introduced that. So the new preface comes from a place of hope, because I wrote it fresh after the Ayodhya Prana Pratishtha in January. I talk about my tour in Andhra Pradesh and many wonderful temples I visited. But unfortunately, the book again ends in somewhat of a mood of concern, because I also wanted to place on record things that have happened in the last 10 years which nobody is talking about. I mean, nobody in any institutional position. The American universities are not talking about it. The world media is not talking about it. For heaven's sake, the Indian government is not talking about it. And that is very simply the issue of the continuing violence against Hindus for being Hindus. You want to call it Hinduphobia or some other word. I feel helpless sometimes witnessing both the violence that has been directed against us and our gods and our sacred lands these last few years, and the utter inability for us to fight back. I know we want to fight back, but I think in the last 10 years, our fighting has not been enough. Our fighting has been distracted, dissipated, misused in some ways. I don't know if I can hope to inspire as much as my fellow panelists both here and in Delhi last month, but I want to point out one thing. You had mentioned the beautiful idea of Shastra and Shastra. Because the only Shastra I know is the Shastra that God or biology or evolution or my parents gave me, which is my tongue and my writing hand. In other words, the word. So what I hope we can get out of our conversation today is an understanding that one of the most effective weapons we have, arms we have, is just the word. It could be the word in English, or the Shabda in whatever language, Hindi, Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, Sanskritam.
ఏ భాష అయినా పర్వాలేదు. Sorry, my mother tongue comes in Telugu, but I'm sure you can guess that. So any language you can. When your word has conviction, when your word reflects your heart and is informed by some study, it is informed by an understanding of this kshetra, this battlefield. And that is what I hope my book does, because there is very few people who have studied the battlefield from inside. There's a lot of wise Hindus, Sitaram Goel, Ram Swaroop, or what else, in generations after that, who have shared with you a sense of concern. And I have learned much from them. But as somebody who is inside academia, who has been trained in the American social sciences, I would like you all to be aware that the battlefield is like a chakravyuham. It's a chakravyuham of words. Sometimes I feel like Abhimanyu. I feel like, what am I doing? I'm stuck inside. Nobody's coming to my help. But anyway, the gods protect us. We cling to our gods. So I'll wind up with my part of the talk. But basically, Vyamin Hinduism, well, I should also mention it's inspired, I guess, because of this Hampi Narasimha Swami whose hand was missing. That was an image that inspired me the most. We all know we are disarmed, we are facing extinction, danger, so many things. But the specific arms I would like to share my knowledge of, not, clinging to Lord Parashurama's feet. It's just a knowledge of the terrain of social sciences, how arguments are being made by the Western Academy, the Western media. The first part of the book talks a lot about that. And to encourage you to then use this one weapon we have, which is our words, in an informed, intelligent, and in the most Sanatana Dharma manner possible, that is with purity, with love, with intelligence, with bhakti. The second part of the book is all about bhakti. So my plea is that you read this book and engage in conversations like this, but really start thinking about how everyone, not just professional social scientists, you could be an engineer or a manager or a homemaker, or a singer or an artist, try to understand the social sciences. What is it that American sociologists and our own sociologists in IIT or TIS or JNU, what is the knowledge, what is the insight they're giving everybody about the world? Why are we not doing the same thing? I think the day we learn to do it, the day we learn to demonstrate that our grasp of society, rooted in our civilizational memories and knowledge, can equip us and rearm us, we will do something spectacular that will please our gods, that will please Mother Nature, and most importantly, it will please our descendants and make their well-being possible. That's why I said we should aim to be the ancestors of the future. We have to start thinking about how the biggest legacy we have is not to unite everybody just for one day in the voting booth or something. I think that is a delusion. What we really need to think about is unity across time, one generation to the other, intergenerational continuity. So with that, I rest my words at Lord Ayyappa Swami's feet and leave the floor.
धन्यवाद महोदय. So as you said about शब्द की शक्ति, मुझे अपने पिताजी के द्वारा कहे गए कुछ वाक्य बचपन में याद आते हैं. वो कहते थे कि यदि किसी व्यक्ति के पास शब्द की शक्ति है, तर्क करने का सामर्थ्य है, तो वह संसार में किसी भी व्यक्ति, हम कितना ही दुर्दांत क्यों ना, आपको कभी भी झुका नहीं सकता, आप पर विजय प्राप्त नहीं कर सकता. और भारतीयों के लिए बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है कि वह तर्क की शक्ति का प्रयोग करें और उतार्किकों के समक्ष अपनी इस वैभवशाली परंपरा का, जो तर्क विमर्श पर आधारित रही है और विभिन्न माध्यमों से हमारे पूर्वजों के द्वारा ये प्रचारित है, उसका प्रयोग करें. और जो भी लोग इस संस्कृति को नष्ट करने के लिए आगे बढ़ रहे हैं, उनको चिन्हित करें. चिन्हित करने के पश्चात एक व्यवस्थित रूपरेखा तंत्र का निर्माण करें और उन्हें नष्ट करने की
ओर कदम बढ़ाएं, ताकि हमारी आने वाली जो पीढ़ी है, भविष्य का जो समय है, उन्हें इस प्रकार का वातावरण ना मिले जहां पर इस संस्कृति को केवल संग्रहालय अर्थात म्यूजियम में देखने की आवश्यकता पड़े और हमें रोना पड़े कि हमारे ये जो देवताओं की मूर्तियां हैं वह खंडित अवस्था में हैं, पूज्य नहीं हैं, केवल दर्शन के लिए प्रयुक्त हो रही हैं। किसी के लिए वह उपहास का विषय हो सकती है, किसी के लिए देखने का गौरव का विषय हो सकती है कि हमारे पूर्वजों देखो आपको नष्ट कर दिया, समाप्त कर दिया। किसी के लिए यह विषय हो सकती है कि हमने लाकर इन्हें यहाँ पर रख रखा है, अपने धन अवशोषण के लिए इसका प्रयोग कर रहे हैं, पर हमारे लिए वह निरंतर शोक का विषय रहेगा कि हमारे ही देवी देवताओं का जो विग्रह हैं, जिन्हें हम पूजनीय मानते रहे हैं, वह आज खंडित विखंडित अवस्था में यहाँ पर उपस्थित है। So now I would request the audience to ask question and more understanding about the book.